Today we ask Reddit to solve the now dangerous phenomenon of court storming. Welcome back to the Green Beans Go channel. It's your host, me, and yesterday I made a video talking about court storming and what we could do to stop it. And at the end of the video, I kind of just said, I have no idea how we actually prevent this from happening in the future. But after I made that video and was certainly stumped, I took to Reddit, I reached out to the college basketball subreddit, and I said, do you guys have any ideas of how to prevent this in the future? And boy, did they have some ideas. So today's video is going to be a recap of all the comments left on my post, and to get started, we will talk about my post. My post was very simple. I summarized the events of Caitlin Clark and Kyle Filipowski over the last month, and I said, guys, I have no idea what to do. I don't think finding schools is doing anything. I don't know if security guard bolstering is going to do anything. I don't know if you can find the fans. So what is the practical solution to court storming? And yes, I know it has 0 upvotes. But it does have over 80 comments, and I've sorted the comments into 3 different categories. We have the unrealistic ideas, we have the funny ideas, and we have the realistic ideas. So in this video, we're going to break all the comments down into one of these 3 categories and talk about them. We'll start with realistic. Lador12 says, I think every school should hire someone. Let's call them a meteorologist. Each meteorologist will be issued a set of conditions under which a court storm is likely. Using these guidelines in their own sense of condition, they must decide whether or not to issue a storm warning by the final media timeout. If such warning is issued, security personnel will commence sandbagging in the student section. This buys precious time for the opposing team to exit the playing field before the levee breaks. Now, really, this just falls under the umbrella of adding more security, but I like the warning idea that this is giving, and I like the creativity of calling someone a meteorologist. I see opportunities for creativity as far as the Jumbotron goes. You can put, flashes of lightning and clouds and rain saying, court storming chance, 90%, prepare yourselves. I think this is a fun idea, creative idea, and somewhat realistic. A funny idea that was posted by Long Times Good Times says the playing surface suddenly shoots up 10 feet in the air after every game. Fans can celebrate below, but if they spend too much time, they will be crushed. Yeah, this is one of the most upvoted comments on the post. The Real Sasquatch 2024 says, wait till opposing teams is off the court. Simple as that, then go celebrate with your teams. And while I don't think that's a horrible idea, I would think it would be kind of funny, and I did post this if I said probably the most realistic idea until a team loses and they just have a standoff with the fans so they never get to storm. So imagine yesterday, Kyle Filipowski, they lose the game and he just stands at mid-court as if to say, y'all aren't rushing this court. Y'all ain't doing me like that. I'll stand here until dinner time if I have to. Irrelevant Train posts a realistic idea saying institute a countdown clock. Make the students feel a part of what's about to happen, just like with any other hype video. You've just upset the #1 team in the country, the students are queuing up to storm, and a giant 30-second timer appears on all the video boards. The students can shout along with the countdown, getting more and more hyped, while the opposition has a chance to relatively swiftly hustle out. Don't make it seem like a punishment. Make it a moment where everyone participates leading up to the storm. I think this is another clever idea, and I think this is a really solid idea. I do think it takes away from the punishment aspects and adds a little more hype and excitement to it. So this may be one of the most realistic ideas that was posted in the comments. Prof Dad GA says, leave the first row empty and add an electric fence. Doesn't have to be too tall, just enough to slow them down, touch it, and get zapped. Spoiler alert, this is one of 3 comments that actually deal with pain as a prevention to court storming. Beware the Fog posts this somewhat unrealistic idea that anyone who goes on the court is also banned forever from all NCAA sporting events everywhere. A lifetime ban of all college athletics for storming the court. A little much, Beware the Fog, a little much. Blue Albatross, bunch of numbers, post this realistic idea, and I'll summarize each of these paragraphs for you. The first one, he or she mentions that there's no safe way to do it. We're just risking injury every time this happens. So the idea is to change the culture. Yes, more and better security is a must, but you need to be like, and he uses the example of Kansas State and Kansas. Jerome Tang says, we do not storm the court. This is not a way to celebrate. It's actually disrespectful to not only your team, but the sport itself. And this change of culture seems to be pretty successful. He notes that everyone lines up, they go outside, then they celebrate outside. And I think this is probably At the end of the day, at the bottom line, this is probably the most realistic way. Changing the culture, changing the narrative, and just telling fans that this is not how we celebrate. And he notes that while this tradition is fun and losing it would be sad, there's still other ways to have fun that do lead themselves to more safer outcomes. So I think changing the culture and changing the narrative is probably the best place to start with this issue. While this idea I don't think is unrealistic, the comment below it makes it feel a little more unrealistic. Street Reporter says, put the opposing team and their tunnel on the opposite side of the court as the student section to minimize the interaction. That's what Clemson does for football, and they haven't had an incident in 70 years. But GameCat235 says this ignores the long-standing tradition of the student section being behind the basket of the away team in the second half. I'm not saying it's not the best idea or best solution, just there'll be pushback. I like the idea and think it would help, but it is a factor that we kind of ignore history and ignore tradition. And I think GameCat is right. People are not going to get on board with that. This one's a bit hyper-specific, but I do think it's legit. Make it clear to students, to whether intentional or not, if you make contact with a player, you will be banned from future sporting events. You can announce it towards the end, or it could just be something that people know. Put the pressure on the fans to behave safely and smartly, and it might help. And I do think that is a good idea. MX on KZ. This comment is probably the most underrated. Build a wall and make the visitors pay for it. That's just gold. This one's unrealistic, but I do like it. No student section for 2 games following the first offense. No fans in the stadium, period, for 2 games following any repeat offense. If you want to get schools to actually step up, threaten them with their box office. I don't think this will happen. I don't think they'll do this. There's too much money to lose. But if they are truly serious about protecting players in these instances, this is the way to do it. I mean, make the school lose money from ticket sales, make the game quiet and boring. But again, I don't think it will happen. Another idea that resorts to pain as prevention, Hillary Clinton's son says dog shot colors are put on all students and an invisible electric fence is put around the court. This one's a bit unrealistic because I think the price is a bit too steep. Storm the court, forfeit the victory. So in the case of Duke and Wake Forest would then incur a loss because of their actions after the game from the fans. I just don't think that's fair to the players who pulled off the upset. I just don't like this idea. And Street Reporter, who we saw earlier in this post, says the trick is to buy the opposing team gear and lead a court storm to force the other team to forfeit a victory. A little 200 IQ play from the fans. This idea from GameCat, who we also saw in a previous comment, I think is a good one in terms of games that are really close, buzzer beaters or 1 or 2 point games. If it's a blowout where the team gets upset by 5 to 10 points, I don't know if this really holds water, but on principle, it's a good idea. If the court is stormed prior to the players leaving the floor or having a security barrier established, a technical foul is called against the home team, and the visiting team gets to shoot free throws, which are added to the point total at the end of the game. If contact is made with opposing players or staff, it's an aggravated tech foul, and the student section is removed for the next game. On the court with opposing players and staff, the notion of vacating wins could also be on the table if there are aggravating factors, so kind of a callback to the one we saw a few posts ago. And again, I think this is a solid idea, and it affects the outcome of the game, which could be helpful in close games. But if Wake Forest upsets Duke by 25 points, the students won't care if there's a technical foul. They'll hit 2 free throws, and then the game will be over. So I do see some loopholes in this, but overall, on principle, I think it's a solid idea. Overall, I think the most realistic and best idea is to do the court storming countdown clock. Make it sort of a hype video. Give the people a chance who don't want to be on the court to get off of it so they are not risking injury or a stampede or a mob. And I don't think that's still the safest way to do it. The safest way is probably like the Kansas Jayhawk fan said, get outside and have fun. But at the end of the day, if we're going to storm the court, I think the countdown clock is probably the best way to go about it. If you have any other ideas that weren't mentioned in these comments, drop them in the comments below this, and maybe I'll do a third video. Can YouTube fix Reddit comments, which fixed my comments, which fixed my ideas to fix the court storming thing that we're trying to fix? We'll see you next time.